This corona experience has given us time to think a lot, I guess, and we're able, for the first time in a long, long time, we're able to rethink some fundamental issues. It would be sad if we come out of this with only slight changes or just technical changes. We really should gain from this a totally new perspective on the fundamentals of life. We've been living by certain assumptions that don't work. They're making us miserable, but we couldn't think of any other way to go about it. So we accepted the status quo and we suffered with it. Hopefully that is not necessary. We don't have to suffer. So what can we learn about ourselves, about life, that can help us rearrange our thinking? The role of dating, or what we call dating, that lifestyle, that whole approach, that whole mindset, maybe we can rethink that. Maybe we can find a way that is more productive, healthier, and less frustrating. So let's start with what was wrong with the way we were living. Instead of thinking, how do we get back to it? Let's think about what was wrong with it. And now, from a safe distance, we can be more honest, more realistic, more objective. Let's take a look at the whole picture. The first notion that it's all built on is that somehow dating takes away the feeling of being alone in the world. That somehow that gives you a relationship. You're in a relationship with somebody. You're not alone. There is some love, somebody who cares. And that's better, of course, than the alternative. You don't want to be completely alone. So the first question is it necessary to have this dating lifestyle when, in fact, it produces more grief than pleasure? First time I heard a couple saying, we're having a hard time, our relationship is difficult, so we're going for therapy. I don't understand that. What relationship that isn't working, that is causing anxiety and grief, should be so necessary or so desperate that you will go for therapy to make it work? If it's not producing the comfort and the security and the reassurance, then find somebody else. What's with the therapy? It seems like we've created an alternative to marriage. A semi-marriage, a quasi-marriage. It turns out that this semi-marriage has all the problems of a real marriage and none of its benefits. None of its benefits. It produces more anxiety than it resolves. It actually makes you feel lonelier than if you had nobody. except that we have this conviction, I don't know where it came from, that not being in a relationship is terrible. That if you're not in a relationship, something's wrong with you. Can we rethink that? Is there anything wrong with just being yourself? And I don't mean being unloved and unnoticed. You have friends, you have family. You're not alone. You shouldn't be desperate. And if you are desperate and you are really alone, will dating fix it or make it worse? There's the drama, kind of for entertainment value. You're going through something and you're going for therapy for it, and there's this big thing going on in your life, and it all feels so significant and serious. And I don't know, is it serious? Is it meaningful? Does it really accomplish anything at all other than keep you busy? Obviously, there are good relationships. Like a good friend, anybody can have a good friend. But it is so complicated. It doesn't seem to be the right answer. So if it works, you lucked out. But you can't call that a lifestyle, a philosophy, a natural way to relate to people. It's not. It's not. So is there a difference in the way you conduct your life today because of the isolation or distancing? There shouldn't be. If you're talking about real relationships, if you're talking about the path to marriage, if you're talking about not being alone in the world, why should distancing make any difference? If something is real, if something is true, if something is natural, then it should apply under all circumstances. If you have a real relationship and the person in that relationship is overseas, does that change anything? So instead of seeing each other, you write to each other, like in the olden days, before there was Zoom. So you write to each other. Some of the most beautiful emotions, the most beautiful expressions of love and devotion are in those letters. I got to tell you this interesting experience I had with a room full of teenage girls on a summer program. We were there for 3 weeks. And to make a long story short, it was impossible to get their attention. They were hyper. Anyway, I suggested that they sit down and write a letter to their mother. Not a letter they're going to send, just a letter. And they can tear it up after they write it. But that everybody should write a letter to their mother. It's been so long since anybody has done that. And not online, with a pen and paper, longhand. Surprisingly, they all agreed. Most of them, probably about 80% of them, did not send the letter that they wrote. But the next day, the entire atmosphere, the entire reality in the room was different, tangibly different. I don't know, they were more settled. They felt more human, normal, real. They had had a real experience. They expressed some real emotions. And there was no bickering because it was a one-way conversation. So something very, very fundamental and real is missing in our lives before we get to dating or not dating. How do we fill that hole in our hearts? Whether it's before Corona, after Corona, during Corona, it should make no difference. Real is real. It never stopped anyone from feeling connected, from feeling bonded, from not feeling alone in the world, even if there was great separation, distance. So I think that the fact that we're keeping a distance has a sobering effect. What kind of relationships do we have that distance cannot dampen? Certainly not destroy. That could be a painful question. Do we have that kind of a relationship with anyone? And if not, that's pretty painful. But let's at least take advantage of this time out where we can think clearly without fear, because nothing's going to fall apart, nothing's happening. So now we can think more clearly. What really matters in life and how do we get those things? So the first thing is be grateful that you cannot date. It's been a long time that we've needed a break. Stop the dating. It's unhealthy. It's unnatural. It's not working. We should stop it. Dating as an artificial lifestyle or alternative to marriage was never a good idea. But when it was introduced, it seemed so exciting, so meaningful, so liberating that you couldn't talk to people. They weren't listening. You couldn't reason with them. The whole notion that boys and girls, men and women, need each other desperately, it's such a terrible mistake. It's Hollywood. It's nasty. It's vulgar. And it's not true. Let's examine for a minute. What does a man need from a woman? What could a man gain from a woman? What? And we're not talking about the same things he could gain from another man. What is it that makes a woman necessary in a man's life? What? It's hard to think of anything. A man living in a man's world surrounded by male friends, that's normal. What can a woman add? Friendship, understanding, sex. You don't need a woman. The only thing that a man gains from a woman is the completeness of the merging of male and female. The Torah tells us that when God created the first human being, that one person was male and female. And that was the perfect model, the perfect standard. To be only male is not enough, and to be only female is not enough. You need to be both. How do we have both after we were separated by God himself? The only way to become male and female is through a permanent bonding where they literally become one. Literally become one. And that means their identity has merged. I becomes we, us. Like that example I've used many times. A guy is on the Titanic, and he finds a way to save himself in the panic. And a half hour later, when he calms down, he realizes that he forgot his wife. No one anywhere in the world that I know of would accept an excuse. I panicked, I was confused, I was frightened, I wasn't thinking. No, even without thinking, you should have been conscious of your wife. In fact, you should have put her first. Your panic should have been, how is my wife going to survive this? That's in your panic mode. That's when you're not thinking straight. How does that happen? You've become one. When a married man says, I panicked, he means we. There is no separate I. That's called becoming one. Just to make it clearer, if there were two friends, two guys who were friends all their lives, best buddies, shared everything for 40 years, and one of them panics and jumps on a lifeboat and saves himself, and then thinks, where's my friend? We could understand that. We could understand that. May not like it, but we can understand it. He panicked. But a wife of even a month, married only for a month, but it's your wife, there is no panic that can make you forget your wife. You panicked about yourself, right? You didn't forget yourself. In exactly the same way, you cannot forget a wife. So what is this magic that marriage brings? It's the completeness of the human being, because a human being should be male and female. All other relationships, all other arrangements, living together but not married, married but an open marriage, doesn't do it. So it turns out that the only thing a man can do for a woman or a woman can do for a man is create the wholeness, the completeness. And the only way that happens is through marriage. Well, what about a meaningful relationship aside from marriage? A meaningful relationship means a friendship that doesn't have to involve a male and a female. In fact, if you had a meaningful relationship with the same gender, it would be better, it would be stronger, it would be safer, less complicated. That's why in dating, for example, dating for marriage, one of the important things you want to know about your potential mate, for example, if you're dating a girl, you want to know her girlfriends. What do other women feel about her, and how does she feel about other women? That tells you so much more about her than how she deals with boys or men. In simple language, if a woman doesn't have a very close woman friend, you have to ask why. How come? If a man doesn't have a very close male friend, you got to ask why. So actually what was happening that was not healthy is that the dating thing, man and woman, was supposed to replace all relationships. This date, this living together, this shared existence was supposed to replace mother, father, siblings, marriage, mentor. This one person was supposed to be everything for you. And that is absolutely impossible. Not even healthy. Got to zero in on what exactly do you need from a member of the opposite gender? What? It can't be everything, and it's got to be something that only this kind of a relationship can bring. Otherwise, we're playing games with our own well-being, with our own mental health, emotional health. So, first step, the first benefit, the first blessing that came from coronavirus is no dating. Don't date. At least for a while. Get it out of your system. Break the habit. It's unhealthy. It's an addiction. You don't need to date. You don't. You don't need a stranger in your life who may or may not like you and may not be good to you or may not be loyal to you. You don't need this. It does no good whatsoever. Unless you like drama. You like the agony and the ecstasy. Give yourself a break. There's no dating. Dating is not a relationship. It's a game. And it's a nasty game. Again, you can have a good, healthy relationship. But you're lucky. And how long will it last? Nobody knows. And then what? Nobody knows. And I can hear the argument, not every marriage is good either. So let's get to the heart of the issue. How do two people merge to become one? Just by making vows? Obviously not. The bond of marriage, if it deserves to be called marriage, is a sacred one, not a human creation. If you cheat in marriage, you're not violating your oath. No, call me liar. So I promised. I renege on many promises. What's the difference? It's much more than a promise or a vow or a word. In fact, in Jewish tradition, there is no vow. No vow is strong enough to create the bond that you're looking for. So what creates the bond? First of all, there's a certain humility, a certain vulnerability that is absolutely essential. It's essential because it's natural, it's true, and it demands attention. What is a healthy vulnerability? And this may be a little too philosophical or too spiritual, but you got to know this. What is true vulnerability? Vulnerability doesn't mean vulnerable to hurt. That's a weakness. We all have that weakness. We can all be hurt. Nobody is invulnerable. Nobody. So yeah, we can all be hurt. Is that what we mean when we say vulnerable? Not really. Vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness. That we are subject to hurt, that's a weakness. So what is a healthy vulnerability? The healthy vulnerability is the realization that I am not enough. I cannot be satisfied with myself. Now, this goes against everything that modern psychology is telling you. You got to decide which one is true. Modern psychology puts all the emphasis on you being you. Liking yourself, accepting yourself, taking care of yourself, putting yourself first. It's a whole philosophy. It's a whole way of life. And it's terribly wrong. Every person is created and born self-aware. Every person is precious to themselves. Every human being takes himself very seriously. Sometimes too seriously, and it causes problems. Nobody needs to be told to love themselves. It's like saying, live in your own skin. Of course you live in your own skin. There's no way you that's the default position. You love yourself, you're precious to yourself, you think about yourself, you protect yourself, you worry about yourself, and you pamper yourself all the time. No exception. And even the person who hates himself is so busy with himself. He's the most important thing in his own mind and in his own life. But he's busy hating himself, pitying himself, and trying to protect himself. So a person who says, I'm so stupid, and you say, yeah, you are. They hate you. They're very busy with themselves. A low self-image is obsession with self. High self-image, obsession with self. That actually is invulnerable. It's invulnerable in the sense that no one else is as important as me. I am the center of the universe. Everyone around me must serve me must benefit me, must not threaten me. It's all about me. That makes you vulnerable to pain, to hurt. You even become sensitive to microaggressions. Everything hurts. If they talk to you, it hurts. If they don't talk to you, it hurts. If they look at you this way, it hurts. If they look at you that way, it hurts. Everything hurts because you're so self-conscious. You think every song is about you. It's misery. Real vulnerability means I'm not enough. I love myself. I care about myself. I'm precious to myself. It's not enough. So the nature of creation, of God's plan, God gives you love to be able to love others, not to love yourself. It's like God gives you the ability to speak. What, to talk to yourself? It's to communicate to others. All emotion is communication with others. You don't love yourself, you don't pity yourself, you don't talk to yourself. You don't fear yourself. Excuse me. All of those things are meant to be shared. Keep a minimum for yourself. Give the rest away. But why would you do that? Because you're vulnerable. Vulnerable means I'm not enough. To spend my life loving myself, caring about myself, taking care about myself, it's not a life. It's not life. I mean, literally, imagine a person who will speak only to himself, who would rather speak to himself than to anybody else. It's a pretty unhealthy individual. So let's start from the beginning. You need to be more than you, not more of you. Huge distinction. In many ways, modern psychology is telling you, you have to be more of you. You have to increase your me, your I, yourself. Wrong direction. More damaging, more harmful. You don't need to be more of you. You need to have someone else beside you. To varying degrees. Your parents, someone besides you. Honoring your parents means there's you, but there's also them. They are there in your life. Without them, you are not you. Then there are friends, siblings. They're all there. They are there beside you. And they are real. And they are important. And they have needs, not just you. This is called civilization. But then there's the ultimate, and that is marriage. Only in marriage can two people become one. You are not one with your parents. You may love them, they may love you, you may be very close to them, devoted to them, think about them all the time, talk to them every single day. It's great. You are not one with them. People who are totally devoted to taking care of their parents, in a quiet moment, they realize they're all alone in the world. Not because they don't have friends, not because they don't have relatives, but having relatives and friends doesn't mean that you're not alone in the world. You're just you, and you have friends, and you have family, but there's just you. So vulnerability means, in different words, to be vulnerable means to be lacking or missing intimacy. Intimacy means the bonding that brings two people together so that they become one. You don't have that with your parents. You don't have that with your siblings. And that's why intimacy, physical intimacy with parents or siblings, is forbidden. It doesn't do what it's supposed to do, what intimacy is supposed to do. So is it okay to be vulnerable? Absolutely. Every now and then we should feel that. We should feel, what am I doing? Just me? Not good enough. More of me will just make it worse. The more I think about myself and the more I worry about myself and the more I tend to myself, the worse it gets. The more isolated I become. It's just me. And that's painful, claustrophobic. So we become desperate to escape the me. Instead of completing the me with someone else, we try to destroy it, to silence it. You get drunk, you do drugs, you get addicted to something that forces you away from yourself. You lose control of yourself. And that's supposed to feel good, but then feels terrible. So in every addiction, there's the attempt to destroy the me that is imprisoning me. I've got to get past the me. But the solution is not to destroy it. It doesn't work. Even suicide doesn't work. The me is not the enemy. It's the absence of the other. When you don't have an other, you're lacking in intimacy. Your vulnerability is painful. But it's a strength, not a weakness. Real vulnerability means a human being can think past himself, is aware of a reality past themselves, and is therefore not content to just be me. So all those popular songs venerating and applauding the I and the me, it's so unhealthy, wrong-minded. I did it my way. Good for you. I gotta be me? No, you gotta be more than me. There's gotta be something more in your life than just you. Okay, so what if you're not married? What if there's no opportunity for marriage? What if there's no chance of marriage? There's no way that God would create a condition without providing for it. God creates hunger, God creates food. If there is a hunger for intimacy, God has to create that availability, make it available. The first vulnerability that every human being should have is with God. That is like religion 101. The first notion, the first statement of any religion should be, you're not alone, you have a God. You're God. You're creator. You are not alone. When you get married, you reproduce an intimacy with a human being that you already have with God. What is the intimacy with God? He is aware of you at all times. At all times. More than a husband, more than a wife. Husbands and wives can get a little distracted once in a while, not think of you for hours. God never stops thinking about you. Because if he stopped thinking about you, you would stop existing. Now, how much more bonded can you be? You and God are inseparable. Not because you depend on him. Not because you got a problem and he'll solve it for you. There's an intimacy here, which means an inseparable bond. You are not you without him. And in some way, he is not him without you. What's a creator without a creation? What's a father without a child? So when we say he is our father, well, it's not a one-sided relationship. Of course, a child needs his father. But how much does the father need the child? So there's an intimacy there already. And that's what gives us the ability to reproduce it on earth, to act it out in the physical with another human being. We should always try to act it out, to find another human being with whom we can be one. But if God doesn't make that available, if it's not part of your destiny, if your soul mate is not available for marriage, then the intimacy got to go somewhere else. You got to find it someplace else. And then it's got to be exactly what you need, because that's exactly how God planned it for you. So let's talk on the level of faith. You have to believe and be absolutely convinced that if you're doing what you can do, and if you're doing what you should do, then you will be missing nothing. God will not deprive you of anything you need. He also won't give you everything you want. It's a good deal. Make that deal with God. Come to an understanding with God. He will give you everything you need, and you won't ask for stuff that you don't need. If all parents could have that agreement with their children. Not everything you need is valid. I'm sorry, not everything you want is valid. And therefore, the answer might be no. But everything you need is his doing. How do you end up needing it? Because he created you that way. Then he will provide without a shadow of a doubt. He will provide what you need. And sometimes by looking at what he provides, you get to know who you really are. So, practical terms. What do we do to get married in these days? Same thing you would do any other time. The difference is purely technical. You want to become one with somebody through marriage. Dating is a horrible mockery of intimacy. It's destructive. It was never good. It was never working. But we were afraid to admit it. It's not your failure. The idea is a failure. It can't work no matter how hard you try. So it's not your fault that it fails. So don't go for therapy. The only real way to get married is to be focused on the end goal. If you're ready to get married, it should be within the year. If you're not ready to get married within the year, you're not really interested in marriage yet. So don't bother dating. Don't make believe you're getting married. You're not getting married. When you're ready to be married within the year, then you start looking. Then you are available. How often do people get hurt? Because one is thinking marriage, the other one is thinking maybe marriage. They shouldn't be dating. So marriage should be something you do within a year. Never more. And if marriage is not realistic within the year, then stay away from dating and from partying and stay away from it. You don't need it. You're not ready for it. You don't want it. If marriage is not an option, if you've been there, done that, then where do you find the intimacy in your life? Obviously, you can nurture other children, nurture your own children, which is very satisfying. It's not the intimacy of marriage. If you've been married and you have pleasant memories, if you lost your spouse, the intimacy doesn't go away. It's just like having your husband or wife overseas. You're not alone. Access is just difficult. But here's the important point. Any real intimate bonding experience has to be created in heaven. It can't happen by human effort because it's a superhuman achievement. That's what we mean by bashert, soul mate, destined. It means God has to make this happen because we can't. It's not like other things. I can run a business, but God has to give me success. Here, I can't be married and ask God for success. The marriage itself is in God's hands. It can't happen. And when it does happen, I'm not guaranteed success. But it happened because it was destined to happen. So if there's going to be a marriage, you got to leave at least 60% of it to God. You can't make a marriage happen. You can't run around all over the world desperate to meet the person you're going to marry, because you can't run far enough and you can't run to enough places in a lifetime to make it happen. It's miraculous when it happens. So stop driving yourself. Stop torturing yourself. You did what you can do. That's all you need to do. Now it's in God's hands. Let it be. And if God says no relationship, you've had a relationship, now you're on your own, then that's exactly what should be. Again, not a failure, not a mistake, nothing you did to feel guilty about. And your relationship with Him should be the focus of your intimacy. If you would think about Him as often as He thinks about you, it would be a very powerful relationship. You won't feel alone. And that's how Jews have survived through the worst that the world could throw at us, because we were never alone. It was never just me against the world. So it's very real. In conclusion, we should all find what we need. God provides our needs, and it will come to us, it will be given to us. Maybe has already been given to us and we don't realize it. And that's why we need this time to think clearly, to reassess everything at the root, at the core, and come to some healthier conclusions. But the thing to focus on most intensely is me is not the issue. Me is not the issue. The issue is, who is there besides me? That's a much healthier way to think. If me becomes the issue, you're headed in the wrong direction. Try it and see what new conclusions you come to. It's not about me. I am whatever I am, that's fine. Where do I go from there? What else? What else besides me? I think that that's what people mean when they say, leave me alone. Leave me alone. Oh, I'm so lonely. Well, make up your mind. Leave me alone doesn't mean get out of my life. Leave me alone means leave the me out of it. Enough of me. What else? Leave the me monster out of the conversation. It's not about me. It's about where the me can go to become bigger, to become complete, to become more purposeful, to fulfill some destiny or some mission. It's got to be more than me. That's healthy thinking. So we should all have what we need. We should all find contentment in what we have. And we should all become a blessing to those around us. A blessing to those around us. The only way to do that is to get past the me monster. And that is the meaning of serving God with joy. The only way you can have joy is if you get past the me monster. The me is what it is. It's fine. I've given it a lot of attention. 20 years, 30 years. Enough. Enough. It doesn't deserve anymore. It's not. You're overfeeding. You're overfeeding. You're going to become emotionally obese. Stop stuffing yourself. Look for something beyond yourself. And then people will be attracted to you. You will become a true nurturer. You give off life. You don't suck up life. You're not a dark hole, a black hole. So this separation, this distancing can be a great blessing for us. Let it be. Let it be the turning point in your life where you get past yourself into something bigger, better, richer, more godly. The rest is commentary.